Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order as Chita. Now, last time we were here together, we started off our basic foundations of country building. We built a heck of a lot of forts, and in the meanwhile, we also started working on investing in our civilian economy. No, we've messed around a little bit with the budget since, so I do want to check and see how we're doing there. Not fantastic as of yet, but we do have electricity now. Or we will get there once the 60 days, or 52 days here wraps up. So in the meanwhile, economy. I'll cut back on the inflation, actually. I don't think I really need that right now. And in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and take a look at who we got in our cabinet, because we have some colorful characters that we need to examine here. So, I don't know why I'm scrolling up there, because these guys are up here. Leading us off the bat is Grigory Semyonov, the adamant of the Transbaikal Cossack Host, who is a member of the military junta ideology. Grigory Mikhailovich Semyonov, the infamous adamant of the Transbaikal Cossack Host, has spent nearly his entire life fighting the forces of Bolshevism, and he sees no reason to stop anytime soon. Born in Transbaikal, Semyonov was once viewed with some skepticism thanks to his mixed Buryat heritage. After giving a good account of himself back in World War I, Semyonov was sent back to his homeland to put together a division of Buryat volunteers. It wasn't long, however, before he was facing down the barrel of the October Revolution. Semyonov wasted no time rallying his forces for rebellion against the Bolshevik regime, and what followed was years of brutal guerrilla warfare against the Red Army in the Far East. In the end, Semyonov was forced to retreat to the city of Harbin, a haven for Russian exiles with nowhere else to go. When the Soviet Union finally collapsed under the pressure of German invasion, Semyonov and his white allies saw their chance. They lured Mikhail Andreevich to Harbin in hopes that they could use him as a source of legitimacy, and marched beyond the Amur to reclaim what they perceived to be rightfully theirs. Now Semyonov and his ragtag force of Cossacks and white paramilitaries find themselves isolated in their old strongholds in Chita. The old adamant still hopes to one day finish his Herculean task to take Russia back from the brink, but his advanced age has begun to creep up on him. Next up we have Nikolai Ukhtomsky, foreign minister and aristocratic conservative. Born in 1895 to a princely family of nobility near Simbirsk, Nikolai's father, Alexander Ukhtomsky, was the leader of all the nobility of Simbirsk. Although Nikolai entered Petrograd University, he did not graduate because of the outbreak of war with Germany, enrolling in Nikolaev Cavalry School instead. Graduating in 1917, he took part in the war as part of the 5th Ulan Regiment until 1918, where he joined the war effort of the Whites in the Russian Civil War. Serving initially as a personal adjutant to Colonel Stepanov, commander of the White Forces in Kazan, Ukhtomsky would go on to participate in battles along the Urals until the end of 1919. By 1920, the fortunes of the war were decisively against the Whites, and Ukhtomsky fled from Krasnoyarsk to Harbin, leaving in 1922 for Germany. 7 years later, in 1929, he returned to Harbin and began to engage in journalism, in which he heavily opposed the Bolsheviks and communism, and called for the restoration of the white movement. These efforts, as well as his aristocratic background and monarchist views, brought him close to Semyonov. When Semyonov left Harbin to finally begin the restoration of the Tsar, Ukhtomsky went with him to aid in his efforts. Next on Ivan Mikhailov. Not a fan of the needy consumer goods. This guy's generally decent. I think this guy's no downsides. I'll take that. Another aristocratic conservative, loved by many and known by so many more. Ivan Mikhailov has long offered his service to the white cause. His local nickname, the Grey Eminence, betrays his role in white politics. A behind-the-scenes advisor and confidant, the elderly Mikhailov remembers his time spent in Harbin, and before that, his time as a finance minister in the white government in the Russian Civil War. While he was not necessarily a competent economist at the time, he found his way back into the political sphere, where he found himself a much more comfortable as a close friend and trusted ears of Tsar Mikhail II, both individuals and increasingly marginalized by Semyonov and, shortly after, Boris Shepunov. While old Mikhailov believes that he has a few final tricks up his sleeve to end, once and for all, those who have treated him so poorly. Well, there we go. And finally, Boris Shepunov. Boris was once a name spoken with a certain degree of both fear and resentment through the Russian emigre groups that inhabited the Manchurian city of Harbin, and now Semyonov's informal Minister of Internal Security's reputation for brutal decisiveness and fervent anti-Bolshevism has followed him north of the Amur. Once a soldier in Semyonov's roughshod army in the Russian Civil War, Semyonov followed his defeated comrades to Harbin, a place where he was quick to find himself at home. In his effort to reestablish influence for the battered whites, Shepunov was able to establish close ties with the pro-Japanese regime and started to train local forces for a hypothetical invasion of the Soviet Union. In the meantime, Shepunov put together a group of like-minded individuals willing to do both his bidding and the bidding of local Japanese security forces. Together, Shepunov's vigilantes stalked the streets of Harbin, carrying out reprisals against other emigre groups they deemed to be hostile to their vision of a renewed white Russia. When the Soviet Union collapsed and his old superior Semyonov marched beyond the Amur, Shepunov and his gang were amongst the first to follow him into the fray. Despite his protest about Semyonov's choice of allies in the RFP and his annoyance with the admin's crowning of Mikhail Andreevich rather than a more legitimate heir, Shepunov remains a close ally to the Ataman, using what he learned in Harbin to ensure that the White Army's iron grip over Chita remains firm. Well, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and also put these guys on the front line. And let's get working on contacting the reform bureaucrats. Let's do that. It's a sad truth that our industrial body is severely lacking in any sort of an expertise or veterancy. Any technical or industrial experts that Chita once harbored were either killed in the decades of strife or fled, apparently anywhere but here. But without those well-versed in industrial management and development, how will we be able to ensure an effective and efficient development of our industry? Clearly, outside help is needed. Many of the white officials, despite residing in Chita, still have significant connections in Harbin and, by extension, Manchuria as a whole. It may be best for us to contact Manchuria's reform bureaucrats, those who have been put in charge of the miraculous industrialization of their state, to see if they have any resources or manpower to spare. Sure, there may be a cost in acquiring their expertise, but surely it's worth it. Got a coup in the northwest provinces. Interesting. Let's go ahead and scavenge for loot. And it looks like these guys are raiding right now, so I wonder if we can pull a sneaky. Well, so far so good. Let's go ahead and do the Imperial Transport Commission next. Get some building slots and infrastructure. Siberia is but likely vast and ill-connected. For many of our soldiers, weeks-long marches are required to get from one place to another, and it's often worse for the peasantry living in the towns and villages within our domain. The economic inefficiencies caused by logistical issues presented to our administration are simply unacceptable, especially in light of conflicts that lay just beyond the horizon. You must found the Imperial Transport Commission, headed by the most experienced of our white emigre friends, of course, which will be tasked with the connecting of all the towns and major villages within our statelet. Well, look at that. Reply to our request has come through today, sent directly from the capital Manchuria. The reply, dripping with formality, barely contained the implications that letterhead. Subsequent industrial aid that would be provided to Czars and Chita would come at a cost, and the cost would be more than just money. The Manchurians and their Japanese masters frequently dealt in favor, something that our government has already accepted as a reality. On a long enough timeline, it seems likely that they will come knocking at our front door, asking to be repaid. However, in the meantime, it appears as if Manchuria, likely with the permission of the Japanese, have agreed to our proposal for industrial aid. This is a fantastic win for us. While it won't necessarily help us directly legitimize our government and provide political recognition, it will, however, allow us to bolster our petty industrial output and shore up our manufacturing. One of the best ways to ensure our victory over our rivals is to make sure that we can put more guns in our people's hands than they can. And that's just what we intend to do with aid. When can we expect the first shipment? Auto saves kicking in. There we go. And look at that. Raid successful. In another 10 or so days, we can go ahead and invest in some more stuff. I think research facilities, probably schools. Might be time for some schools. Food for the hungry. Look at that. Also get more liquid reserves. Which is going to help us cover all of this without having to go into debt. Which I find to be quite nice. Probably pay off the rest of our debt there, from there. To clear his thoughts, Anatoly Sobchak walked down the streets of Chita, his coat wrapped warmly around him. He lost track of the number of times someone on the street waved to him and called his name or cheered him on enthusiastically. He lost track of the number of times someone... Oh, I remember that. Enthusiastically, if a bit loudly. The last campaign for the mayoral office had really gotten people fired up. Then again, people all across Russia were fired up, desperate for any improvement to their lives whatsoever. He did hope to improve their remaining lives as he could, though certain individuals made that task much more difficult than it needed to be. Squadron soldiers came towards him, their rifles slung over their backs. Speak of shit and it comes, Sobchak supposed. You are Mayor Sobchak? The soldier closest to him asked, his question at least sounding genuine. Sobchak supposed that even though he was popular among the people, well, he thinks war soldiers had much more important figures to learn the names of. Well, that would be me. Is something the matter? The soldier not answered, instead shoving a piece of paper towards Sobchak that he had not noticed before. Frowning, he read the paper carefully, his eyes widening the more he read. Tax increases. Another one? Sorry, the soldier said insincerely, sounding almost bored, before turning and signaling his squadron leave. Sobchak kept switching between looking up at their retreating backs and down at the paper. Did they think him some kind of messenger meant to give people bad news on their behalf? And a tax increase in these conditions was simply cruel for people struggling to survive as is. Someone had to put an end to this behavior, and soon. He was really in charge of this town. Alright, I think... schools are the play. We'll go ahead, take the rest of our income and pay off some debt with that. And we're going to be connecting some more power grids soon, which is going to help us out a fair bit. But in the meanwhile, let's import some industrial machinery. Our industrial equipment is, to put it diplomatically, terrible. Other more couth members of our administration have said even truer things about the state. The reality is that most of our equipment that we have in our factories is inherited from the Soviets, and almost all of it is decrepit at best and completely unusable at worst. But he can't make new machines without, well, working machines. And so we must begin to search for ways to import industrial machinery for the sole purpose of kickstarting our own domestic and civilian sectors. Perhaps old friends in Manchuria can help out, which will not only ensure that we have an operable industrial economy going forward, but that our factories will be able to effectively churn out weaponry and supplies to our soldiers. That makes sense. You know what doesn't? The fact that I always have to fucking reassign generals here. Let's get Leonid. I need to do a fucking army commander, fine. Let's get Leonid back in. I forget we had Leonid in before, but we do now. Alright, what else can we do? We could do external investments. Do I want to do that immediately? Do I want to hold on to some of this local power? Alright, how's our electricity situation doing now? Is that going to kick in soon, I hope? There we go. Now we can go ahead and allocate some of these units. Let's do a 4-4 split off the bat. And that gives us a lot more machines, or military factories to start going with. We get fighters, right, as our bonus. Fighters and interceptors, okay. Let's get one of each going right now. Fighters and interceptors. And what are we missing out? Motorized equipment. Let's get some motorized going as well. We have one more we can dump some stuff in. We'll put it into the infantry rifles for now. And there we go. For industrial machinery. We could do Siberian resources. I think that would be... Well, we're getting construction bonuses either way, actually. Now let's start this, at least. Siberian resources. Siberia is so frequently portrayed as a vast, unsettled wilderness covered in marshy swamps and frozen tundras. While this assessment is inherently false, it tends to obscure the material value of the land that we currently occupy. Its value isn't what's on top of the earth that we stand on, but instead what's underneath. The region has large amounts of resources that we can exploit, such as silver and copper, for both personal use and export. Most importantly, however, the paramount resource that any Siberian stately could covet, coal. Coal is used to power our hungry factories, allowing them to consistently pump out the goods that we need to survive and thrive. We need to invest in the extraction of these resources for the benefit of our state and our economy. Well, there we go. And there goes Irkutsk in their power grab. And, yeah. Well, not their power grab, that's Buryatia. They've restored order, rather. Which is a little concerning. Let's do some industry management. We're now losing... I'm guessing that's lack of electricity. Could be, at least. Oh. Most unfortunate news has arrived from Chita, the capital of the Russian monarchism in the Far East. Grigory Semyonov, known as the Ataman, has passed away from natural causes at the age of 71. A popular figure in Chita and a valuable ally of Tsar Mikhail. He has departed the world to join his many predeceased comrades. Born in the Transbaikal in 1890, Semyonov first distinguished himself in the old Tsar's Cossacks Legion during the Great War. When the Civil War began, he organized some of the first anti-Bolshevik revolutions in the Transbaikal and, with the help of both the Czechoslovak Legion and the Japanese, managed to seize both Chita and the surrounding regions. There he held out against the Soviets even as the rest of the white movement crumbled, before being forced to flee into Manchuria. Decades later, as a leader of the emigre community in Harbin, he became a leader of a Japanese-supported anti-Bolshevik front and rose to become the indisputable chief of the military clique that crowned Michael Andreevich, taking the new Tsar to Chita upon the triumphant return to the city. As per his wishes, the Ataman has been buried in his home village of Karanza. While maybe dangerously close to the frontier with the socialist revolutionaries, thousands of people, from peasants to the generals, have visited to pay their respects. Even His Majesty has issued a statement expressing his condolences. Semyonov may have left behind a troubled legacy for some, but all of Chita recognizes him as a strong and respected leader. He defended his motherland until his final moments. Well, shoot. Let's go ahead and work on the Imperial Development Company. In the darkest days of the anarchy that reigned in Siberia following the concrete establishment of our state centered in Chita, unemployment was rampant and many turned into transient workers, often without a home. While things are looking brighter now than they were then, our civilian sector is still suffering. Thus, a number of our prominent economists have proposed founding an Imperial Development Company, a state-run corporation that's put in charge of and sponsors public works projects, organizing them to give people employment and further develop our crippled civilian industry. The organization of our civilian sector is paramount to ensure that our state has a functioning economy during the wars of reunification that are ahead. That works. Do we want to try to bully him more again? That might be funny. Yeah, let's do it. The war in the desert. There's Semyonov. Oh, we have a new guy here. I'll read that in a bit. The news of Grigory Semyonov's death had filled Mikhail II with apprehension. The man had all but kidnapped him, carrying him along as a puppet in the frozen city of Chita. And yet he had been a known quality. Mikhail had known where he stood. You cannot yet say the same of Semyonov's replacement, both as interim prime minister and as commander-in-chief of the military as a whole, Boris Shepanov. He had knew of a general, of course, Semyonov's long-serving protege, and interacted with him before, but never in such a political capacity. Shepanov had spoken grandly at Semyonov's funeral, eulogizing the man and proclaiming his greatness, no doubt already knowing that he would be stepping in forward to fill a power vacuum. Mikhail was sure that he had equally grand plans. The White Army always did, especially when they involved him. Did they own this at the start of this? I forget. Anyway. Which was why, on this very day when he formally invited Shepanov to take control over the government, he had to fight hard to keep his expression neutral. The man's entire demeanor was entirely different. He walked different, spoke differently, even seemed to have, if possible, gotten even colder than he had remembered. As Shepanov thanked him for his confidence and turned to leave, no doubt to execute whatever plans he had already made, Mikhail could no longer prevent a grimace from crossing his face. What was to come, and what did it mean for him? Will he be any different? Hello? Ah, great. It's not letting us. So? As you are aware, I'm your new interim prime minister, as well as commander-in-chief of the White Army. I shall be taking on all other duties handed by my predecessors as well. Rest assured that. Let's rather swell, Commander Shepanov, but I've been meaning to ask you something for a while now. Yes, my Tsar? Shepionov asked, his face twitching ever so slightly. He despised being interrupted, especially by someone like the human weasel sitting in front of him. I was, wondering, hypothetically, what if I didn't, want to stay here? In Russia, I mean. What are you saying? You're the Tsar. You cannot leave. Well, I don't like it here, Shepionov. Please, if you... Let me make one thing perfectly clear, Majesty. You're going to be staying here in Russia for as long as that crown rests on your head. And I would suggest strongly to put to bed any thoughts of abandoning your destiny. Mikhail wilted as his new overseer spoke and retreated into his usual defeated silence. Whatever slim hope remained within the puppet Tsar, it was all crushed into dust in that instant. The Tsar is tired. Please see him to his quarters. An unexpected visitor has come to Chita, requesting talks with the government. That particular visitor happens to represent Mikhail Mikovsky's wing of the RFP, and he claims that a conflict between Mikovsky's fascists and those of Rdzevsky will soon occur. In the event of this war, Mikovsky's faction wishes for a ceasefire between our forces so that he may better focus on the enemy at hand. While we can hardly trust these despicable fascists, we cannot deny that Rdzevsky is far and away the larger threat at the moment. Of course, the ceasefire would only last until after the war for Rdzevsky is concluded. Very well, but we have our eyes on that. It's not letting us do it. It's annoying. That's an industrial empire. With no shortage of assistance from the Imperial Development Company and the Imperial Transport Commission, the industry of Chita, the heart of the White Movement, has gone from turmoil to roaring in a matter of months, it seems. As our industry and output gets stronger, we continue to construct more factories in ever-increasing cycle industrialization. But we shouldn't stop here. This industrial growth is only a small step towards our goal, a fully industrialized state spanning from the Pacific to the Baltic. Nonetheless, the model for growth that we have constructed and tested in this area of Chita and their general success will act as examples for what we can do in the future. But for now, there is no rest for the brave worker. Got a bit of a surplus going now. You also have negative growth going. Got the negative real growth. That's not cool. Also, I think at this point we should change from fighting poverty, just building up the GDP. I think after this focus, we will go ahead and what am I thinking of? We'll do the not the tremors. We'll do external investments here. And that should be able to wipe out our current interest, our current debt, or rather. You could also invest in infrastructure. I think I'll wait until we get the external investments done. Dear Father, I never got a response to my last letter, and I can't help but think that means you either never received it or you're too intensely disappointed in your son to craft a response. I won't blame you. What I did was foolish and deeply unbecoming of one such as myself, and I should have known better. I should have chosen better, but what's done is done, and I now have no choice but to face a hell of my own making. I sincerely regret once again troubling you with my problems, but in truth I have no one else to turn to. This land is foreign and cruel. I have no friends, only scores of villainous men who pretend to respect me in public, and no doubt mock me in private. I'm a living, walking joke. They call me Tsar, but everyone knows the truth. I'm a puppet, a fagad. I'm now convinced that Russia is one of the worst places on earth. The nights are long, the winters are longer, and the people of this land are irritable and violent. I have gained a newfound respect for my forefathers, who somehow managed to keep this god-forsaken frozen hell under control. My armies have seen a great many victories, but I cannot share the enthusiasm. How can I? They claim to be fighting on my behalf, but this is not true. They do not fight for me. They fight for the idea that I've chosen to represent, and for the men who hold me captive. I desperately want to leave, but I cannot. I'm kept under House of West in all but name, a glorified pet to these relics. I beg of you, if you cannot show pity, at least tell me what I could do to try and pull something positive out of this pit I find myself in. Signed, Michael. Let's go for the next generation of rifles. I think that's going to be a good boon for us. What do we want next? Let's do Imperial Prospector Core. More copper, more iron, more coal. More. The current production quotas aren't nearly enough to keep up with the rapid, exponential industrial growth that we're witnessing. Without resources that were to support the massive increase of factories that we're looking at, well, perish the thought. Mikhail, at the best of the brightest economists of Chita, has declared the formation of the Imperial Prospector Corps, an organization that will be dedicated to searching out of material deposits within our borders and begin their exploitation. Sorry, microphone. Progress comes at a cost. Certainly, in the IPC is well aware of that, but in a place as wild as Siberia, Mother Nature can take a backseat to progress in order to ensure the prosperity of Azar's subjects. There we go. I'm trying to remember when Mogadon goes after him more. The United Arab Kingdom. Let's get you infantry expert. Let's put you over here for now. Let's go against Satka. Saka? However you say it. Got some more research. Let's do... advanced computing machines. Let's do some resource extraction as well. Yeah. While the industrial equipment that we received from Manchuria and abroad helped revive our civilian industry and allowed us to actually operate the factories that we currently possess, sadly it's not enough for us to expand our resource extraction campaigns. The Imperial Development Company, as effective as it has been so far, seems to be a bottomless pit of demanding further resource allocations to ensure a continued development schedule. And one of the most pressing demands that their administration has come to us with is the implementation of a further resource extraction. Thus, we must take on a domestic effort to improve our industrial equipment as it has now become possible, so that we can take full advantage of the natural resources afforded to us by the bounty of Siberia. There we go. Let's do the raid. Well, here begins the raid. And, it's going quite well, I gotta say. we go. Seize all we can. Food for the hungry. Guess we're not finished yet. Let's go ahead and do... Wait, any of the expertise stuff. We'll bump up the expertise, I think. That'll be good. Let's get some external investments going. Which boosted up our GDP quite nicely. We have a bit of a deficit going right now, but that's alright. Pay off some of our debt and invest the rest right now. What do we want? Now let's do some production units. And let's do the Reclamation Act. Our small enclave has many things, never dedicate it officer corps the best troops that can be conscripted, and factories that belch out refined industrial goods day in and out. What we are lacking, however, is usable arable land. Sadly, apart from the city of Chita and a few other mentionable towns and villages, most of land that is controlled by the Emperor of all Russia and his administration is completely unusable. Vast tracts of marshes and forests so thick that a man could barely pass through the trees. After a wise suggestion whispered into the ear of the Tsar himself, Mikhail II has declared the implementation of the Reclamation Act, a law that puts the Imperial Development Company in charge of clearing unusable lands to transform it into tracts of earth that could be used for anything from low-yield farming to better training grounds for our troops. Anything's better than the squalid backwater the IDC has been tasked with clearing. Well, there we go. What do we want to invest in now? Maybe infrastructure would be good. Well, let's do some infrastructure investments. And then I'll save up to get some more electricity kicking off here. Though... maybe we're missing... I might be missing something here. I'm not sure. Now, this will be done in December, though. I think in the meanwhile, we will queue up... I think a hospital will be good. Play for next. Exiting the lodge with fishing rod in hand, Kirill surveyed the landscape before him. It was another beautiful, picturesque day in the unspoiled Siberian wilderness. The rest of Russia was going to hell, but as far as Kirill was concerned, this place was a paradise on earth, or at least it was, until Kirill spotted a pillar of black smoke rising from the tree line. Looking more closely, he thought he saw distant trees beginning to tumble down and flocks of birds frantically flying away. What the hell? Kirill exclaimed, throwing down his rod as he ran off to investigate. When Kirill finally arrived at the scene, it was worse than he feared. Scores of workers in hard hats were in the process of chopping down trees by the dozen, and large construction vehicles were recklessly tearing up the ground. Would this Russian statelet be able to have hard hats? I don't know. Just music there. In the midst of all of this, the foreman was directing the workers. Kirill clenched his fist as he angrily approached the foreman, unconcerned with the notion that he may be trespassing. The foreman, a grizzled older man like Kirill, turned to face the strange man approaching him forced. Who are you? What the hell do you want? I'm Kirill. I live back that way, and I want to know why you're tearing down my forest. Your forest? This ain't your property, pal. We checked. Kirill was visibly unsatisfied with his answer. So where I come to hunt, I survive off this land. Who gave you the right to come and rip it all apart? Look, We're with the Imperial Development Company. The government said we're to clear this space for construction, so take it up with them and stop wasting my time. The foreman turned away from Kirill, and he took this as his cue to leave. Kirill promptly retreated in a huff, and he knew where he would be spending much of his night writing angry letters. No land is safe from the march of progress. I don't think actually that number might be right. Secure position. Where do they reach out? Beside our differences. I think it's this one. So I think we might have time to rush down here and get an extra unit. So I'm going to see if we can. Let's do the military's addendum. No empires form and no empire endures without a strong military. Without us, Admiral Semyonov, having led us on a long journey, Chita understands implicitly, but we find ourselves weakened by budget cuts imposed by us civilians. This is intolerable. Dangerous. We submit an addendum to the budget currently in review, which, accepted, will ensure that we get the resources needed to prepare for the fight ahead. All we need to do is meet with the Tsar and convince him of the addendum's importance. Without it, the state will not endure. Well, we got another unit. Very nice. Let's get Leonid back in. Get our Field Marshal, Boris. Get the front line back in. Actually, let's make sure we get... I want to get the experience for Leonid here. We'll keep an eye on these guys in the meanwhile. Because I don't think they're ready. These guys are ready yet. Military's addendum. Look at that. We got another unit. Add them to the force. Let's do specialist training. Modern warfare is dominated by the specialists, the soldiers who both trained in and experienced with tasks that no ordinary soldier would be capable of. We are surrounded by enemies. The Tsar can be assured that our triumph can be guaranteed by transforming our soldiers into an army specialist. Training relating to command decentralization, beyond the line operations, sabotage, and much more will be worked into our soldiers' regular training regimes. In this way, we can say that we will never be caught unprepared. Magocha. Mr. Magocha lover? Mayhaps, I don't know. As the Principality's Minister of Finance, Ivan Mikhailov was used to the higher commands of the White Army, making appointments to speak with him, or just as often not making them and arriving on anyway. This particular meeting was of the latter variety. The general, one of those closest to Semyonov's inner circle, had walked right past his deputies and secretaries, entered Mikhailov's office, and closing the door behind him. From his demeanor, Mikhailov could tell that whatever the man wanted, it would not be something he himself would be pleased to grant, and that he would not have a choice, besides. The request, as he expected, was polite. The military would be requesting further funds to be diverted towards their own initiatives in the upcoming budget, in order to ensure the defense of the state and of the Tsar, of course. The authorization for that diversion was to be included was placed in front of him a moment later, with all of the specific amounts and diversions meticulously identified. All it needed was a signature on the bottom line. On the general's stare, Mikhailov knew that he would and did sign the document. The general whisked it away a moment later, leaving it without word. His door closed behind the man once again. Mikhailov once again felt deep frustration that he had grown used to build within him. This time, however, was stronger than usual. The military had always ensured its own primacy in the Principality's budget. Excuse me, I'm getting a little sidetracked. My timer's about to go off. Just noticed that. But lately, their requests had grown, both frequency and amount. Very soon, Mikhailov knew, and if the trend continued, he was not sure where the civilian government would find funds for projects of any size. He was also not sure if the military cared. But how far can they go? Well, I don't know how far they can go, but I know how far we can go. Not much further at this point. So I'm going to have to end things here, folks. But thank you as always for watching, my friends. I hope you liked this video. If you did, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, leave in the comment section below. I read all comments I get, and I do appreciate any feedback you might have for me. Check out my various links down in the description box below, leaving any likes or leaving comments, feedback down in the comments section below. I read all the comments I get, and I do appreciate any feedback you might have for me. And sub on the notification bell to keep updated with uploads as they come out. And yeah, I'm going to leave things there, but thanks as always for watching, my friends. My name has been Mr. Dogbot333, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye now.